Hello, students. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the fall of the House of Usher. This is in replacement of being in class, so it kind of breaks down some of the things that you're hearing as you listen to the story. In order to get here, remember that we're going to log in through Clever. So if you go to Clever and you go to my homepage, which says Miss H. Cummings on it, you're going to be able to see the Pearson Savas textbook login. And then after you log in, remember that your login is going to be your Skyward username. That is not your full email address. It's the first part of your email address. And then your last name, all capital letters. So after you get logged in and you click on this Realize tab, you should see an underneath classes where it has an assignment posted for you. It doesn't look like that for me because I'm the teacher. Or you can go up to your actual assignments and then click on assignments, and you'll see your textbook. What we want to look at is this: The Fall of the House of Usher, Student Edition, Unit 1. The Fall of the House of Usher accessible level text kind of just breaks down the story into a quick summary for you. So that's what I want for you to look at afterward, okay? So all we're doing with this is we're just listening to the story, okay? So you at this point should be at the last part of the story. So I'm going to do a little recapping of everything that has happened so far so that you can kind of know what happened. And feel free to follow along with me either in your physical textbook, which the story starts on page 13, or as we go through the paragraphs. So in the first two opening paragraphs, we get the setting. The setting is a creepy old house. Okay, we have a narrator who is riding up to this creepy house. And when he comes up to it, he starts to feel a really, really bad feeling. Okay. He thinks that it makes him feel unnerved. And so, what was it? I paused to think. What was it that so unnerved me in the contemplation of the House of Usher? It was a mystery all insoluble, nor could I grapple with the shadowy fancies that crowded upon me as I pondered. I was forced to fall back to the unsatisfactory conclusion that while, beyond doubt, there are combinations of very simple natural objects that have the power of thus affecting us, still, the analysis of this power among considerations beyond our debt. So, what is he saying there? Let's put that into real words. He's saying that sometimes we get really creepy, we'll get weirded out, right? We'll get a creepy feeling. We don't really know why. But no matter what, it's really hard for us sometimes to kind of talk ourselves out of that feeling. And that is the feeling that he has as he looks upon the house. So look at some of these ways that he describes the house. He calls it a mansion of gloom. He refers to the, sorry about this. He refers to the black and lurid tarn, which is another way of saying a really creepy lake. Okay. He's here because his friend wrote him a letter, and in the letter it tells him that he is having some problems and that he really wants him to come and visit with him because he's feeling very sad, and he believes that maybe through the joy of this guy's society, which means just hanging out, if he just hung out with him, that somehow it would make him feel better. Now, our narrator goes through the entire story and does not have a name. We don't know who he is. We just know that he's someone who used to be really good friends with Roderick Usher. Roderick Usher lives in the house with his sister, with his servants, and with the family doctor. And so our narrator has come to see him because he talks to us about how as youthful friends, they were intimate associates, which means they are really, really good friends back then. But he doesn't really know anything about him, okay? Now, he does talk a little bit about the family of the House of Usher, and kind of putting that into regular words is that he's saying in this house, they have lived here for a really long time, an ancient family, so hundreds of years, goes back to king and queen days, goes back to medieval times. So this family has lived there for a really long time. And recently has been doing some kind of weird charity, some unorthodox things that they have been buying, some paintings and the like. But he also points out that the family lays in a direct line of descent. So it's kind of gone father to son, father to son, father to son for this really long amount of time. And in the movie, it sets up that it's been 700 years because that's just a really good long time that makes us think of a family that's long. What's weird about this is it means that the family has kind of stayed in the same house, living in these same walls and passing their family down father to son and father to son, father to son, and not really expanding. A lot of times with families, if you just look like at a family tree, family expands out, right? It goes further. So this family, though, has stayed all in their little house, stayed in their town, and they are now known as the House of Usher. So a house is a family. That's all that means. So it's the family of Usher. And then it's also the actual physical house, right? All right. So he comes into the house. He looks and he sees that the house looks to be kind of has a crack. He points out that perhaps the eye of the scrutinizing observer might have discovered a barely perceptible fissure, which extending from the roof of the building in front made its way down the wall in a zigzag direction until it became lost in the sullen waters of the tarn. So there's a crack that runs all the way down the house, okay? And then it dissolves into where you can see where the water hits. Now, our narrator notices all these things in the first 5 paragraphs. He's very observant. He tells us everything about where we are and what we're seeing. And then he comes up to the house. He's greeted by a valet, which is another way of saying kind of like a butler who comes in and lets him in. And then on the staircases, he meets the physician of the family. Now, this family is ill. That gets established pretty early that they have some family illness. We know that from the letter, right? The letter that we got that says that Usher isn't feeling well. And he kind of says, hey, he accosted me with trepidation, meaning with being a little bit weary of him. And then he passed on. And then we go into a room. So our narrator comes into the room and he meets Usher. And Usher has been lying back on a sofa, kind of relaxing, because he's very overwhelmed with the world. And our narrator noticed that he looks pretty rough, like he is not looking healthy. He's looking like he's been pretty sick. He describes him here as a cadaverous of complexion, meaning he looks really white and pale. His eyes are big and large and liquid and luminous beyond comparison. So his eyes are really wide. His lips are thin and pale, but still really pretty. So he's kind of like a pretty looking guy, but he's super pale. He's super kind of vampire-y looking. And you'll kind of see that portrayal when you watch the movie. So after he gets done describing him, he says that he kind of notices that his friend doesn't quite seem right. And Usher kind of tells him, I'm so glad you came to see me. I was really, feeling pretty low. I am having this problem. It's a, quote, constitutional and family evil, and one for which he despaired to find a remedy, a mere nervous affliction. Now, we can think about that as depression. So he's suffering from anxiety and depression. And he says that some of the symptoms that he has is that he's super, super aware. His senses are hyperactive. Okay. So anything that's not bland food is too much for him. He can only wear garments that feel good on his skin. Flowers smell disgusting to him. They oppress him. His eyes are very, very tortured by light. And then he can only listen to certain kinds of music. Okay. So that lets us know that Usher has a lot of things going on with him. And it kind of makes us wonder, what's happening with this man. Can we trust this man? Do we know what his illness is? Do we understand it? um, So then in paragraph 11, this is an important one. He says that he is pretty sure that he shall perish. He will die, okay, because of terror. He says that in this unnerved, in this pitiable condition, I feel that the period will soon or later arrive when I must abandon life and reason altogether in some struggle with the grim phantasm fear. And so, what he is saying here is that I am convinced that I'm going to die because I am so, so scared. Okay. And what we call that right there is foreshadowing. All right. Um, so we get the first part of our narrator's discovery. He kind of works through this whole entire story to figure out, to understand what is wrong with his friend. And he notices that his friend thinks that the house that they are living in is maybe haunted, or that there's some superstitious impressions that he has in regard to the house. And as you read on, you'll notice some of those superstitious impressions. Now, our Roderick Usher is cognizant. He's mentally put together enough to say, maybe though, what really is depressing me is my sister. My sister, who I love so much, his long and sole companion, which is an